Hey, everybody, it's Christian Pedersen, joined by Dan Dickau. We're back for another episode of the Gonzaga Nation podcast. Thank you very much for checking in with us. If you are new here, make sure you search and subscribe to Fan Nation Zags on any social media so you can follow us for the best Gonzaga coverage all season long. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts by searching Gonzaga Nation. Dan, thank you very much for joining us. As of us recording this today, we are less than a month out from the craziness in the kennel. We are less than 2 months out from actual, consistent Gonzaga games being available to watch and consume both in person and on television, wherever you are in the broadcasting spectrum. So let's do some schedule talk. Is that okay? Can we get into the nitty gritty just a little bit now that the year is kind of finally here?
Might as well because Gonzaga still hasn't dropped their official schedule. You're trying to get bits and pieces from the other teams releasing their schedule. There was one that just came out in the last couple of days. But Gonzaga still has one, maybe two openings, if I'm not mistaken, that they've got to fill. And, I would expect that release to happen any day. I mean, shoot.
So maybe this is just the nitty and not the gritty.
Yeah, you could put it that way. I mean, it's close to being finalized from my understanding. But the last school or two that they're in negotiations with to get a game done, contract hasn't been signed, and so you're not going to put that out there until a contract has been signed.
Okay, fair enough. So we will get into the nitty, but not the gritty of the schedule. We'll give everybody a little bit of a teaser. We can definitely talk about the front end of the schedule a little bit more concretely. They open up against Yale, and then they move on to the Maui Gym Invitational. Let's talk about the Yale game or the Maui Gym Invitational, because there was some headlines coming out about the Maui Invitational's location and games being played.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody knows or should know about the devastating fires in Maui that have kind of just completely torn apart Lahaina, which is where the Maui Invitational has been played since its inception, other than the COVID year or two where they had to play in different places. But that tournament has always been played at the Lahaina Civic Center. The Civic Center was spared by the fire, but it's been serving as kind of like a hub for getting people back on their feet, being able to take care of community services and those kind of things. So they've been searching for secondary options, ideas of where to host a tournament, and they've kind of they're fully set now on playing the tournament in Hawaii, which I think is great. There was talk of Las Vegas, there was talk of San Diego, different places like that, but glad to see that the tournament is staying in Hawaii. It's going to be played in Honolulu though, instead of Maui. But the nice thing is especially for Gonzaga fans who want to travel, instead of being in the Lahaina Civic Center where there's roughly 1,800, 2,000 seats, they're playing on the University of Hawaii's campus in the gym there, seats close to 10,000. So it's going to be a much easier ticket for people to get to. Honolulu is obviously a much easier place to get to as well. It's a little cheaper for flights, a little cheaper for hotels, many more options there. So all in all, good news. Tournament is still going on in Hawaii. And so though that's the latest in regards to the Maui Invitational.
Let's talk about the games themselves then. We know Purdue, and then it sounds like Tennessee or Syracuse would be that second option, but what's the vibe going into the Maui Invitational for this Gonzaga roster? Are you looking for blowout wins? Are you like, hey, we just got to hold on by 10 against Purdue? Give some of the people what you're really trying to be like, hey, these are my main three hopeful takeaways from this, first couple games.
Well, it's going to be a bloodbath of a tournament. I mean, I think this might be the best early preseason ranked field that's ever been to a Maui Invitational. You could take it a step further and possibly say it might be even the most loaded field for any of these kind of tournaments. You look at Purdue, who Gonzaga opens with. They're going to be preseason number one in a lot of polls. Kansas is out there. They're going to be number one in some of the preseason polls. You mentioned Tennessee. They've been really good as of late. They're a top 10-ish team to start the season. Syracuse,
Be kind.
Well, they're yeah, yes, I know you're a Syracuse alum, but they're to be determined. Nobody knows what to expect because Boeheim's gone. Coach Autry has been there for a number of years, but is he going to keep implementing that zone? Is he going to have his own wrinkles offensively? Are they going to have a plan? I mean, that was one thing with Syracuse is offensively, you never knew what they were going to do for the most part because I don't want to say they just rolled the ball out, but Coach Boeheim really trusted his top player or two to create opportunities and to be the guy that kind of just provided scoring opportunities for themselves or others. They didn't play with a lot of free flowing continuity. They were kind of an ISO type of team.
Yes. Carmelo Anthony basketball became the signature style on offense. Yes.
Yeah, but you know what? If you recruit the right kind of player to fit that, it can work, and it worked for a long time for Coach Boeheim. So I think the biggest thing for that will be what they do on the defensive end of the floor, and then you look at a couple of the other teams. Marquette has a chance to be a Final Four type team this year. I mean, they should be preseason top 10. And I know I'm missing a team or two in regards to the field, but it's loaded.
Are you setting this up are you trying to be, hey, Gonzaga could lose some games here and let's not freak out? Are you trying to soften the blow here? Or do you think that they can still go toe to toe with, potential preseason number ones?
I think it can go both ways, to be honest with you. I think Gonzaga's roster is talented enough to be considered that caliber. But think about it. You're replacing an all-timer in Drew Timme. You're replacing a first-round draft pick in Julian Strawther. You're replacing a lot, and you got to figure out where the production is going to come from. Now, if you look at last year's team, I think they were overrated going into the season. They took some bumps and bruises early on, and then they were challenged. They grew, they improved, and they maximized their abilities and their opportunities by the end of the year. I think this is a Gonzaga team that is very talented. And I haven't been to a practice yet. I plan on getting there in the next couple of weeks before Craziness in the Kennel because myself and Greg Heister, Richard Fox will be broadcasting that for KHQ and SWX. But we don't know what this team's going to look like without Drew Timme. I mean, everything has been focused on him scoring opportunities the last couple of years, and rightfully so. So it's going to be a work in progress, but I think it's going to be a fun work in progress. I think they can definitely compete, but I don't think they know what they're going to be at this moment in time. I think the Maui Invitational could show a lot as to what they're going to be, but I wouldn't be surprised or I wouldn't be heartbroken or disappointed if Gonzaga doesn't play or have the results that many fans are going to want. Because, again, the expectations are so outlandish for this program now that they're hard to continue to meet game in, game out, event in, event out, season after season. That being said, they're going to be good. This is going to be a great team. But do I think they're going to win the Maui Invitational? I'm not ready to go there just yet.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the month of December then. For what we've got lined up is at Washington, home versus Jackson State, home versus San Diego State. Not entirely a cakewalk to follow up the Maui Invitational. Your thoughts on some of their December games?
Well, that UW game is, I mean, you want to call it a rivalry game just because it's a big school in the state, but Gonzaga has handled that series over the last 15, 20 years. So that's a fun game for Gonzaga fans to get the win and kind of have the bragging rights amongst the state. But I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of fluctuation and changes in UW's roster. They lost a scoring guard, Minifield, that had a chance to be really good for him, but Keon Brooks decided to stay. So they do have some talent there over at UW, but it's just a fun game to have on the schedule. The other one or two games really in the month of December that are providing a lot of interest would be the game against UConn in the Battles in Seattle at Climate Pledge, where they get a chance to, I don't want to say avenge the loss to UConn, who would become the national champs, but that's the way a lot of people look at it. I think it's a tremendous scheduling coup for Gonzaga to go ahead and get the defending champs on the schedule again. They come to Seattle this year. They return the game by going back east at Madison Square Garden next season. So I think that's great. And then the other one would be the San Diego State, another national title contending team from a season ago. They were in the national title game. So if you look at the talent of programs that Gonzaga plays, I mean, the conversation, and I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but the conversation anymore that Gonzaga doesn't play anybody just needs to be done. It just needs to be done when you look at the schedule again. So San Diego State's going to be good, but they're going to be much different than they were a year ago. Coach Brian Dutcher, one of the most underrated nationally in regards to getting credit, but he and his staff do a great job. I don't think they're a Final Four type team this year, but they are dang good.
All right, so let's look then past that, and we get to largely the rest of that is WCC play, but there is one specific stretch that we have alluded to before that you have labeled as kind of like the linchpin of we're going to figure out who this team really is, and that's the month of February where they take on St. Mary's, Portland, Kentucky, LMU in a pretty tight 12-day stretch. Is that still the key part of the season that you're looking at once we hit WCC play, or have you had some time to maybe drift towards, hey, I'm a little bit more worried about this, that, or the other?
No, I think that's an important stretch for sure, because that's, if I remember correctly, that's about 2/3 of the way through WCC play. So you should know who
once
you
they
are
finished with that stretch, they have everybody one more time and then they're done. So it's by the time they're done, it's February 15th. And it's, closing time on the WCC play.
Yeah. So I think really what you're looking at there is you're looking at, who you are as a team by that point. You've played everybody in the league. You should know who everybody else is in the league at that point. But then you get a chance to go outside your league and play a team like Kentucky, who's a top 10, top 15-ish team this season, and test yourself in a new environment. I mean, yeah, you get the environment of playing at St. Mary's in front of 3,800 people. You get the experience of playing at LMU again, 4,500 people. But to prepare yourself for opportunities to play in the NCAA tournament, you haven't played in front of crowds like that since early in the season. So you go out, you're going to play at Kentucky with nearly 20,000 people in a different style of game than you're used to in the WCC, with style of play, with athletes, with different officials. I think it's a great test for Gonzaga right there.
So then at that point, we have kind of talked about the schedule. I think we can expect maybe once we get into the little bit closer to it, we'll talk more in depth about WCC. But let me ask you then the big question that's on everybody's mind. How many wins, losses this year?
I had a feeling you were going to try to peg me on this. And I'm one of those guys that have never, I don't want to say I'm one of those guys, but I try not to put a number on it, but quickly count up for me, since I don't have the schedule pulled up. How many games will Gonzaga play before the WCC tournament? Give me that one.
Before WCC play or before the tournament?
No, sorry, before the WCC tournament. We know there'll be 16 WCC games. So I'm guessing they'll have 29, I think is the max allowed.
I see 24 on here, depending how many they end up playing in Maui. It could be 26 or 7.
Okay. So it's always 3 in Maui. So that would be 27. Right.
Okay.
So that's 27. And then I believe there are 2 games are left to be filled on the schedule. So let's say 29 games.
Okay.
Going into the WCC tournament. There's been years now where in that case they've been 28-0, 25-4. I think if this team is 24 wins, 25 wins going in there, that's solid. I think if you're sitting at that with the schedule that they've played, your net's extremely high. You're prepared. You've played all different styles of teams. I think you're looking at 25 wins. You're sitting in a good spot.
I think that's a bit of a tepid 24, 25, but I like that. It's a confident enough. We got to
Well,
get.
I'll say this. I'm not going out there and saying Gonzaga is running the table this year.
Well,
You're going to have those fans that are going to do that. That's not me. I mean, I look at
just more in terms of the post-production social media clipping job that our wonderful people do behind the scenes.
yeah. So this one's going to go out there and
Well,
circle
no,
the
but you
wagons
said
and
you took 90 seconds to say 24 or 25 wins when you could just have hit it with 25 wins, baby. Woo! And that would be all they need to just click and click and click and love you. But hey, we'll get you there eventually, Dan. We'll turn you into a walking, talking TikTok reels type dude.
not going to happen.
Not gonna happen. Dan wants so little of that they built a whole studio so Dan could avoid working with me. That was the entire game plan there. All right, Dan, thank you very much. We will, like we said, have all the in-depth of the WCC, and there's probably a couple more schedules. So this is not entirely the schedule, but I think we get a pretty good gist of where this season is headed and kind of, some of the major plot lines to look forward to. So I thank you very much for setting that up for us, Dan. Like we mentioned before, follow us at Fan Nation Zags on all the social media, and make sure you search and subscribe Gonzaga Nation wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, talk to you guys soon.